أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. This is our lesson number 6 in the Introduction to Fiqh and Islamic Jurisprudence course. Today, inshallah, we will cover the Maliki Madhab. We'll talk about Imam Malik radiyallahu anhu. We will explore the basis or sources of the Maliki Madhab. We will talk about the main scholars in the Madhab and the main books, the authorized books for textbook and fatwa and so on. The Maliki Madhab, first of all, we need to talk about the Imam of the Madhab, who is Imam Malik radiyallahu anh. He is Abu Abdullah Malik ibn Anas ibn Malik ibn Abi Amir ibn Amr. He's from the third generation, so he is a tabi'i of tabi'in. So we have Sahaba, and then the second generation after Sahaba is tabi'in, the followers of Sahaba. And then the third is tabi'i at-tabi'in, followers of the Sahaba. So these are the three blessed and favorable generations where the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, best generation is mine, then the one after, and then the one after. Imam Malik died 179 Hijri. He heard from Nafi' Mawla ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab. So he heard from his servant or his Mawla, Nafi'. He also heard from Muhammad ibn al-Munkadir, al-Zuhri, Abdullah ibn Dinar, and other great tabi'in. Some of those who narrated for him, like took from him hadith and narrated, are al-Zuhri, which actually one of his shiyukh. So it is an example, as we're going to be talking about that inshallah in more detail in the hadith course. Sometimes we have hadith that is narrated seniors for the juniors. Usually it is the seniors narrate, the junior takes and pass it on and so on. But sometimes the senior, the sheikh, will take his student hadith and basically narrate it. So this is one of those examples. Anyway, al-Azhari also, he narrated for him, al-Azhari, al-Thawri, al-Layth ibn Sa'd, al-Shafi'i. Of course, al-Layth ibn Sa'd and al-Thawri and al-Azhari are the same level, same tabaqa. Al-Shafi'i is basically the generation after him. So al-Shafi'i, Imam al-Shafi'i, the well-known Imam Shafi'i of the Madhab, is actually a student of Imam Malik, or Imam Malik is one of his teachers, shiyukh. Of course, scholars unanimously agreed on his great status as a followed Imam in piety, deen, knowledge, recollection, accuracy, hadith, and fiqh. Al-Bukhari said, Imam al-Bukhari said, the most sahih isnad is Malik for Nafi' for Ibn Umar. So this is one of the, what we call the chain of, chain of gold, or the golden chain of narration. There are a few examples. This is one of them, Malik for Nafi' for Ibn Umar. Imam al-Shafi'i said, if it wasn't for Malik and Sufyan ibn Uyayna, the knowledge of Al-Hijaz would have been lost. He also said, Malik is my teacher, and from him we took the ilm. Al-Shafi'i considered Malik to be the most knowledgeable scholar of hadith at his time, and said if Malik doubted something in hadith, he would take it all off. So basically, if there is something in hadith, only if he just doubted a sentence or a word or something that didn't make sense to him, or didn't he doubted that is actually accurate or correct, or the Prophet said, he will basically just throw away the entire thing because he doesn't trust it. no book on earth is more accurate than Muwatta Malik. Al-Muwatta is the name of the hadith book of Malik. Imam Malik had a musnad or a hadith book he called Muwatta, not a musnad called Muwatta Malik. Right? And of course, that was a time of the Shafi'i. At that time, Bukhari wasn't yet born. So Bukhari came after that. Bukhari is a student of Ahmad. So his Sahih Bukhari came much after that. So at the time of the Shafi'i time, there wasn't Sahih Bukhari. I'm not sure if Bukhari may have been born. Off the top of my mind, I'm not sure when he was born. So maybe we need to check that. But anyway, the Sahih Bukhari itself wasn't there. He probably, even if he was born before the Imam al-Shafi'i dies, he would have been like very, very young, like a kid or something. So because I think he died 260 something, 250 something. So and Imam al-Shafi'i died 204. But anyway, at that time, Muwatta Malik was the most like Sahih book of hadith. And this is very important to note. After that, when Sahih Bukhari came, Sahih Bukhari now is considered the most Sahih book of hadith, right? But that's like in general case, general matter. But that doesn't mean necessarily that every hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari is more accurate than its equivalent in Muwatta Malik. As we said before, Imam Malik, for example, if the same hadith in Malik and Bukhari or Muslim or whatever, then some scholars will argue that the narration, then the wording in Muwatta Malik would be more accurate because of the shorter chain of narration. There were a couple of attendees raising their hands. If you want to ask something, please put it in the Q&A and we'll look at it. All right. So if he wanted to go out to narrate hadith, Imam Malik, he would make wudu, put on his best clothes, sorry for the typo here, and groom himself. He was asked, when he was asked about that and actually like criticized for it, he would say that I do that to dignify the hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, out of respect to the hadith. Imam Ahmad was asked who is the best one to memorize his hadith. He answered Malik. The man then asked, and what about the opinions? If I'm going to memorize opinions, Imam Ahmad also said opinion of Malik. Imam Malik received ilm from over 900 shaykh. 300 of them are tabi'een. And he wouldn't take a narration of anyone unless he is certain of their fiqh, piety, and their adherence to conditions and responsibilities of narration. So he would make sure that it is not just piety that is like a condition or a parameter of taking ilm from somebody. He has to be knowledgeable and adhere to the conditions and understands the responsibilities of doing narration and narrating a hadith for the Prophet. So basically, he left and threw away a lot of narrations of several pious people who he considered don't fully understand the conditions or take the responsibility as it should. And this is a great lesson just to show you that like pious people are great. That's great to have it like a pious and a piety. That's great. But that doesn't necessarily mean this person is qualified to pass on knowledge or to basically teach people and so on. And through the history, if you like analyzed the history, all the problems and chaos and the wrong fatwas and whatever we get from people with piety but less knowledge, like most of the time. Like, for example, Al-Karramiyya, Ahmad ibn Karram, Imam of corporealists, Mujassima. He was a Zahid person, very pious, but he basically wasn't qualified, and he didn't have enough knowledge and qualification to make interpretation of the hadith or Quran and so on. Right. So Imam Malik made strong ijtihad and established his madhab on solid pillars, which we're going to talk about. He was the first to establish the application of what is referred to as absolute interest of Sharia, al-masalih al-mursala, which expanded the horizon of deducing judgments from the Sharia sources, and many issues revolved around it. We'll look at it in the usul al-fiqh. Usul al-fiqh is basically one of the usul that he would consider is what is referred to as al-masalih al-mursala, or absolute interest of Sharia. His madhab was widely respected to the extent that what Malik says becomes recognized even without asking how it was derived, how he got that from. And later on, when the scholars writing his opinions and so on, they will even strip out any support or evidence of and the opinion of Malik by itself will stand by itself. That doesn't mean it is not supported. It is supported, but everybody trusts Imam Malik's opinion to the extent that they don't really even want to ask how you got to this opinion. All right, so basis or source of the madhab, and before we go there, I think let's a couple of questions. What is meant by al-Zuhri is the same level of al-Thawri. I don't think I said that, brother. I said al-Zuhri is a sheikh of Imam Malik, and he narrated for Imam Malik, and that was an example of basically earlier generation narrating for later generation, which is not the norm. And then there were other scholars I was continuing who narrated for al-Zuhri, for Malik, and al-Thawri was there. So al-Thawri is same level of Imam Malik, not al-Zuhri. Right? Al-Thawri, I think, died 160 something or 170. Yeah, I think. So he's more or less within the same, like tabi'i, same generation as Malik. Right? And then al-Shafi'i is a student. So I just give an example of shuyukh and peers and students narrating for Malik. That was the objective. I didn't understand how the hadith in Muwatta Malik is more accurate. More accurate than Sahih Bukhari, if you say, if that's what you mean. Sahih Bukhari is the most Sahih book of a hadith. Right? Accepted in general. When you have a hadith in Muslim or in Bukhari or whatever, and it is narrated in Muwatta as well, the same hadith, and is basically narrated for Malik. And we've said that al-Bukhari says the most Sahih, or as we said, the golden chain is Nafi' or Malik for Nafi' for Ibn Umar. So if al-Bukhari is narrating hadith like that, he will say from his sheikh, for example, to his sheikh, to his sheikh, to his sheikh, until he reached Malik, because Malik is a more senior generation. So in that hadith, if the wordings are not the same, if there is a contradiction or anything like that, for Bukhari or for Muslim, scholars, the muhaqqiqeen of scholars, will consider the hadith in Muwatta to be more accurate because it is a shorter chain. So as the hadith passes through generation after generation, it is less susceptible to changes. So at Malik level, it was more accurate. When it go less, another level, whoever heard it from Malik may have changed it a little bit, right? Or narrated it by meaning, whatever he understood. Because hadith could be narrated by meaning, not necessarily word for word. That's another ilm, another science to of hadith. And then whoever took from here, they're going to be the same. Until it reaches al-Bukhari, there might be more difference, like in meaning or in wordings and so on. Okay, a great example of that is hadith al-Jariyah. Hadith al-Jariyah. when he was asked Allah fi sama. This hadith in Muwatta Malik narrated in different way. And that's why a lot of scholars say this hadith is muttarib. So that you cannot rely on the wording of what in Muslim. Okay, I mean, I don't want to get way out of topic, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of understanding what I meant. Okay, so let's continue now, and like we can pick on, like if you want me to elaborate on that, let's do that in the Q&A session. Just remind me. So now let's move on to the basis and the sources of the Madhab al-Maliki. First of all, for sure, is the Quran. That's like common. Sunnah again. At the third level, the consensus. Inference, which is qiyas. Actions of people of Medina. This is something that's unique in Madhab Malik. He will consider the actions, what Ahl al-Medina are doing, like acceptable within them as us, right? And at that level, he will even put it ahead of other sources. Sahabi saying, right? So if he has a Sahabi saying, but he has action of people of Medina doing something not the same or not doing it, he will basically give precedence to the action of people of Medina than the Sahabi saying. Preferential deduction, again, that like the Hanafi Madhab, but again, it's down below. Hanafi Madhab, it's a bit above. Preventing potential causes of harm and haram. And this basically goes back to the al-masalih al-mursala, which we talked about, the absolute objectives or absolute objectives of Sharia. Carrying status over changes in situation. Again, it's basically like, for instance, if somebody is praying with a tayammum, and then as he's in the middle of the prayer, the water came. In Abu Hanifa Madhab, you should basically, or Hanafi Madhab, okay, water came. Once it came, your wudu is, or the tayammum is done, you need to go and basically make wudu and pray again. He will do here in Madhab Imam Malik, and the other Madhab actually also take the same position, is what we call istishab. So basically, when you started your praying, you were tahir, with tahara, with purity from tayammum. So now you carry that status over, even if the situation changes. Even if the water came after that, that doesn't change the issue or the matter that when you started, you were purified yourself to start the prayer, and therefore you are able to continue it. That's just a quick example. Also, at the end, respecting differences of opinions with other madhabs, mura'at al-khilaf. He will consider that, but not always. It's something that sometimes he takes into account, will consider it, sometimes he wouldn't. Now, if we compare that with the Hanafi usul, for example, we have Quran, Sunnah, Sahaba opinions, consensus, inference, preferential deduction, and then custom. Custom is the urf, which is not here, but more or less, you can see similarities. Some of that, like these issues, like custom, for example, is basically al-urf, which is maybe a little bit equivalent to action of people of Medina, what was custom in Medina time. But Hanafi is not necessarily Medina. It's basically the custom of the whoever people are living. It's not the same, but I'm just trying to make a quick comparison here. Right. The main scholars and isnad of madhab. Let's like outline or talk about some of the great scholars that basically carried out Imam Malik's knowledge and ilm and basically developed it even further and passed it on. Question is, what is preferential deduction? We talked about that last time with the Hanafi madhab. It's al-istihsan, if you remember. So perhaps you can refer to the last lesson of Hanafi madhab. Okay, main students who spread the madhab, The first on our list is Ibn Imam or Sheikh Ibn al-Qasim, and he is the most established scholar when it comes to Malik's opinions, and you will see how he features in like many times, as we're going to talk about, especially the books of the madhab, like later on. He died 191. Remember, Imam Malik died 179, so just maybe a bit over 10 years, 12 years after Imam Malik. Imam al-A'mash, one of the narrators, also very well-known scholar, died 202. Ashhab, one of the narrators and the pillars of the madhab, died 204. Asad ibn al-Furat, the author of what is called al-Asadiyya, which is one of the pillars of al-madhab as well. One of the main books of the madhab. He also one of the narrators of Imam Malik, died 213. Asbagh, one of the pillars of the madhab, also died 225. Abu Mus'ab, one of the narrators of the Muwatta, 242. Sahnun, a main feature in the madhab, and one of the main pillars in al-Maliki Madhab, who collected al-Mudawwana, which we're going to talk about it like shortly. He died 240. Ibn al-Khassas al-Abhari died 365. Al-Abhari al-Kabir, Sheikh of al-Maliki Madhab at his time in Baghdad, died 375. Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, a great and main figure in the madhab. He is basically Muhadhib al-Madhab, the refinery of the madhab, author of al-Nawadir. Again, we're going to talk about it. Died 386. Ibn Abdul Barr, again a great hafiz and very well-known scholar, died 463. Abu Bakr al-Tarshushi ibn al-Walid authored several books in al-Madhab, died 520. The judge Ibn Rushd, who is sometimes we refer to as the grandfather, the Ibn Rushd, the grandparent, al-Jidd. And there are Ibn Rushd al-Jidd, al-Ab, al-Hafid, right? And you know them by what they wrote. So the grandparent wrote al-Bayan wal-Tasheel. He died 520. His son, he wrote al-Barnamij. He is also like a tafsir scholar, died 563. The grandson, a very well-known philosopher, Ibn Rushd, who basically the West one always called Averroes. He died 595. Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, the author of many famous and widely spread books, died 543. Al-Qadi Iyad, of course, a great scholar, very well-known, author of Al-Shifa في تعريف حقوق المصطفى, died 544. Ibn al-Hajib, another main figure in the madhab and great scholar, has several widely accepted books and pillar in the madhab, died 646. Abu al-Hasan al-Shaduli, or al-Shadili, the well-known Shaykh of Tasawwuf, died 656. Is he the same Ibn Rushd who wrote Incoherence of the Incoherence? You mean his attempt to rebut al-Ghazali book, who is basically rebutting the philosophers? Yes, that's Ibn Rushd al-Hafid. Ibn al-Munayr, or al-Munir, a great scholar who had the corrections on al-Kashaf of al-Zamakhshari. Al-Zamakhshari, as we know, is the Imam of Mu'tazila. He wrote a great tafsir book. He actually one of the pillars on tafsir book. Like a lot of scholars came after that and basically just explained it and so on and so forth. But it had a lot of problems because he embedded his i'tizal madhab within the book. So one of the great books that basically stripped this out and clarified that and point these issues out is Al-Hashiyah by Ibn al-Munayr, who died 683. Taqi al-Din ibn al-Daqiq al-Eid, one of the greatest scholars and mujtahid of his century. Like there is a consensus that this scholar was a mujtahid of the century, died 702. His father as well, Majduddin, Ibn Daqiq al-Eid was also Shaykh of al-Malikiyah. He was a Shaykh of al-Maliki Madhab at his time, died 667. Ibn Ata'illah al-Sakandari, the great scholar and very well-known Imam of Tasawwuf, died 709. And of course, also his grandfather died 612. Ibn Juzay al-Kalbi, very well-known scholar, author of many great books, died 704. One of the books is very common. I think you may have came across it. Is his tafsir book. Khalil, محقق of the Madhab al-Maliki, author of Mukhtasar Khalil, the summary of Khalil, which is the main textbook that was then explained by several scholars. As we're going to see, it's like one of the crossroads of the Madhab, when the Madhab basically had another jump. Like there are few jumps in the development of the Madhab, and this, of course, was one of them. He died 776. Al-Shatibi, the great fiqh scholar, died 790. Ibn Arafah, again, very well-known scholar, has a lot of book, tafsir, aqidah, mantiq, and other subjects, died 803. Ibn Khaldun as well, very well-known historian, died 807. Al-Jazuli, the author of the Dala'il wal-Khayrat, very well-known book for salawat of the Prophet, peace be upon him, died 870. Imam al-Sanusi, the great scholar, several widely accepted books. He is the author of al-Barahin and al-Muqaddimat al-Sanusiyya, and also he has a lot of aqidah books, like gradually from very basics all the way to the Aqidah al-Kubra. Died 895. Sheikh Zarruq, a great scholar, has several books in Maliki Madhab and Tasawwuf and others, died 899. Ibn Ghazi, another great scholar, Sheikh al-Madhab at his time and the Muhaqqiq. He had written a great explanation on Bukhari and other books, died 919. Sheikh al-Akhdari, again, very well known. And now we came more into the recent scholars now, where we still study those books until now. He is the author of As-Sullam in al-Mantiq. He is a scholar of the 10th century. Ibn Ashir, another great scholar, very well known. We study his matn until now. He is a sheikh of Maliki Madhab at his time, one of its pillars. His matn, or the textbook, is Matn Ibn Ashir, which is he is famous, widely known as Matn Ibn Ashir. Its name is Al-Murshid Al-Mu'in, part of its name. He died 1040. This is a matn, or the poem, where he said في عقد الأشعري وفقه مالكي وفي طريقة الجنيد السالكي. So basically في عقد الأشعري يعني عقيدة الأشعري, فقه مالك, following the fiqh of Malik, and following the tasawwuf way of al-Junayd. Sheikh Ibrahim al-Laqani, author of Jawharat al-Tawheed, died 1041. Again, that's a great textbook we still study until now. I study that in my secondary school. His son, Abdul Salam al-Laqani, also has an explanation on his father's book, Al-Jawhara, died 1078. Sheikh al-Dardir, of course, very well-known great scholar of Aqidah. Imam al-Dardir, very well-known great scholar of Aqidah, Fiqh, Tasawwuf, Arabic language, and other subjects. He is the author of Al-Kharid al-Bahiyya, which we explained. It's on the YouTube channel, the complete explanation of this Al-Kharida, and I explained it in a way that is link the intention of Imam al-Dardir, and basically link that and modernize that basically with some of the issues that we see now from atheists and philosophers and so on. So it's very, I think, very recommended that everybody listen to that before asking any questions in the group, as I said. He also wrote al-Dardir explanation on Mukhtasar Khalil, which is a pillar in the madhab. He died, Imam al-Dardir, 1201 Hijri. Muhammad al-Amir, one of the greatest scholars as well, author of several textbooks, died 1232, and his son, al-Amir Jr., was alive during the 1253. meaning we don't know exactly when he died, but as of 1253, he was still alive, so maybe a few years after that. Ibn Ajarum, of course, صاحب المقدمة الآجرومية in the grammar, Arabic نحو. Very well known scholars, died 2053. So this just gives you an idea about some main figures of the madhab. That's really a drop in the ocean. If we kept talking about all of the scholars who served and developed al-madhab al-Maliki, we are going to take hours and hours, and even trying to talk about every one of those and give him like the adequate bio of who he is and talk about him, we will take days and days and weeks to finish all of them. But also it gives you an idea that the madhab, there was never stopping in developing and like refinery of the madhab and opinion and modernizing it, right? At every stage, you will notice that we started from like the 2nd century, when basically at Imam Malik time, all the way until the 13th century, and then it actually continues after that until this very moment, right? So it is not one man show madhab or anything like that, as some ignorance would basically want you to believe. And the isnad of the madhab, that's why the isnad of the madhab is important. All those scholars took the madhab and took the opinions from their sheikh, from their sheikhs, all the way with a complete isnad. And Imam al-Nawawi had a very, like a great saying here about the isnad of madhab or isnad in general. And he's saying, this is one of the important requirement and clear, precious matters, which a fiqh scholar and student must know. So basically, the isnad, even in fiqh, is also important. It's not just isnad in hadith and that's it. It's isnad in every ilm, sharia ilm that you take, you have to have isnad. And being ignorant of it is an awful thing, as his teachers in ilm are parents in the deen, and the connection and our connections between him and the Lord of the world, Rabbul Alameen. How is it not awful to be ignorant of one's genealogy and the connection between him and his Lord, the most generous, the giver of all? So basically, it is an awful thing. How it is not be an awful thing that you be ignorant of that? While he is ordered to make dua for them, be righteous to them, mention their achievements and contributions, praise them and be grateful to them. So you are required, you are ordered to do dua. You have some obligations towards the people who taught you at every generation, right? All the way. So if you don't know that, so how are you going to distinguish, like do your obligations toward them? So that's an awful thing to be ignorant of that. So now compare that with a lot of so-called shuyukh and scholars of Wahhabis and Salafis who call themselves Salafis, and they don't have isnad, they don't have shuyukh. They basically just buy books, open the book and read by themselves, and basically out of like ignorance and arrogant, they think that they understand everything better than everything else, anybody else, and start calling everybody mubtadi' and so on. All right, so let's talk about the main books of al-madhab then. Any questions for what we talked so far? Right, so questions related to Aqidah, brother, let's take it at the end in the Q&A session, right? Main books. All right. The very first main book that we want to talk about is Al-Mudawwana by Imam Sahnun. It's also called which is a book that has compiled, the Imam Sahnun compiled in it thousands of issues documented by Sahnun ibn Sa'id in the 3rd century from narrations of Abdul Rahman ibn al-Qasim. Remember, we said Ibn al-Qasim is the most accurate, most established scholar when it comes to Imam Malik, because he accompanied him for 20 years continuously, took it from him. So he's basically a pillar, one of the main pillars in the Madhab al-Maliki. So Sahnun, from the narration of Ibn al-Qasim for Malik, he collated thousands of issues in this al-Mudawwana. but also included what Ibn al-Qasim heard directly from Imam Malik, and what also Ibn al-Qasim heard from or collected from Isnad, okay, through others. So maybe there were other students, and Ibn al-Qasim may hear or may take issues, opinions of Imam Malik that narrated to him through other students like his peers around him. Sahnun also added issues Ibn al-Qasim inferred based on Imam Malik's usul. So it is not only, or not all of that, all of it is just Imam Malik's opinions or sayings. It included also some issues that Sahnun, that Ibn al-Qasim inferred based on the usul of al-Madhab. Sahnun supported issues by al-Muwatta and added some differing opinions within the madhab. So Sahnun not just collated and left it, he worked on it. He serviced the book and serviced the madhab. When there are an issue, that opinion of Malik, for example, he would look in al-Muwatta and support the opinion with whatever like narrated in al-Muwatta. He will also include differing opinions by others within the madhab that he may have heard from that scholar or these scholars as the students of Malik. But he died before completing this work in all the sections of Al-Mudawwana. Right, brother, anybody that would like to be excused for prayer or anything like that, you can go pray and come back, no problem. You don't have to say that in the Q&A. Thank you. The second main book is al-Asadiyya, which is, again, it was used by many scholars at the time, documented by great scholar and judge Qadi Asad ibn al-Furat, based on narrations of Ibn al-Qasim. Again, Ibn al-Qasim, same figure we're talking about. But Ibn al-Qasim, some of the opinions that Asad ibn al-Furat narrated from him or documented, took from him. Asad ibn al-Furat Ibn al-Qasim sent to Asad ibn al-Furat telling him, I changed my opinions about something, about some issues. So rely on what I told or what I said and what is in Sahnun collection, not your collection, because your collection now includes several issues or some issues where I changed my opinion or there was more refinement into it. Because Asad ibn al-Furat was like more senior than Sahnun. So Al-Mudawwana therefore became the main book. So you have Al-Asadiyya, which was basically by one of the more senior students of Ibn al-Qasim. Okay, but it included like opinions and issues that changed. And then we have Sahnun, who is a more senior, more junior, but also collected and collated later on most recent opinions and more refinement into his book, basically. Excuse me, Al-Mudawwana. And also Sahnun, because he was like more junior, he also included some of Watan al-Asadiyya already. So Al-Mudawwana became a collection of some of Watan al-Asadiyya and became a collection of the work of four main mujtahideen in al-Madhab. Of course, Imam Malik, Ibn al-Qasim, Asad ibn al-Furat, and Sahnun himself. So it became the more comprehensive book in the Madhab at the time, Al-Mudawwana. And because of that, scholars spend their time and effort explaining and summarizing Al-Mudawwana. Since it became the main book at the Madhab at the time, it was basically the core of any scholar that comes after that. He want to explain, he want to elaborate on some issues and whatever. he will take al-Mudawana and basically work on it and serve it. So it was explained and summarized by many scholars. Some of the summaries are summaries of Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, Ibn Abi Zimnin, then Abu Sa'id al-Barad'i in al-Tahzib, which was the people of the, which was basically what relied upon and adopted by like what nowadays Tunisia. In Al-Andalus, they relied on like a book that was very famous and basically adopted there was Al-Wadiha, which was documented by Ibn Habib and compiled, he compiled from his narration for Ibn al-Qasim and others. Then another scholars came, Al-Utabi, who was a student of, like came later after Ibn Habib, and wrote Al-Utabiyya, which included narrations of Ibn al-Qasim and Ashhab, Ibn Nafi' for Malik, which are other scholars, not just Ibn al-Qasim, but other scholars for Malik. Ashhab was a scholar for Malik, like a student, for Malik. Ibn Nafi' for Malik, also student for Malik, and so on. And what Al-Utabi heard from Yahya ibn Yahya, one of the narrators, Asbagh and Sahnun and others. So it was widely accepted, and scholars moved away from the work of working on Al-Wadiha to Al-Utabiyya, as it was more comprehensive. That's in Al-Andalus. And then Mukhtasar, sorry for the typo again, Mukhtasar Khalil, in the 4th century, Abu Zayd al-Qayrawani compiled al-Mudawana. So he took al-Mudawana of Sahnun, al-Wadiha, al-Utabiyya, all the main books that have been developed and refined in previous generations. And he also he compiled all that, and he took some of the usul of the madhab, what was written in the usul, the fundamentals of the madhab, the usul, and included all that in a book that he called Al-Nawadir. So it was basically like a compilation of everything that was like ongoing at the time. This is by Abu Zayd al-Qayrawani. That's why we said when we were talking about Abu Zayd, he was one of the main figures of the madhab and pillar of the madhab. And that what was adopted, and basically scholars will use and explain and summarize and so on until the 7th century, when Ibn al-Hajib, one of the great scholars again, wrote Jami' al-Ummahat, the compiling of the mothers, or the main, which was another great contribution in the madhab, added to the widely spread main books at the time. It was adopted by many Islamic regions. Then came Khalil, the Imam or Sheikh Khalil, came in and explained this, like the book by Ibn al-Hajib, the al-Ummahat. He explained it in like 6 volumes, very big books. And it became the best explanation of Ibn al-Hajib book, which was done by Khalil, Sheikh Khalil. But Sheikh Khalil didn't stop here. He also summarized it, because you always want an explanation and a summary as a textbook, and then like the main detail and the main book that will basically will be for more research and stuff like that. But as a textbook to younger students, and even take them step by step, you need summaries. So he also made or wrote Mukhtasar Khalil, summary of Khalil, which is basically the Mukhtasar of Ibn al-Hajib Jami' al-Ummahat. Okay. And since then it became the main book in teaching fatwa, and it became the most relied upon book in the madhab, Mukhtasar Khalil. And because of that, at that time now, the scholars that came after that took Mukhtasar Khalil as the main book, and again started serving the madhab through explanation and summarizing that book and so on. One of the best explanation to that book is basically done by Imam al-Dardir as well. So Sharh Mukhtasar Khalil lil Imam al-Dardir. So that's it for today. I think we have covered the Madhab al-Maliki, like a quick intro about it. Next time, inshallah, we will talk about al-Shafi'i, Madhab al-Shafi'i. Then the Madhab al-Hanbali, another lesson, so maybe 2 more lessons, inshallah. One for Shafi'i, one for Madhab al-Hanbali. and then we will talk about some usul and qawaid and like fiqh in general, just give you a good basis about the fiqh and solid ground that you can build on, inshallah, in more advanced courses. All right. So before we go, then there was an issue about like a discussion in the group about mistakes of scholars. Now, I had a very strong opinion on this issue, and I put that in the group. I think it's clear where I stand on that, but just to explain further, because I said I'm going to explain further. I'm not sure if the brother who asked that question or raised that issue is in the group now listening. If he is, so please feel free to post your questions, or let me know if I didn't answer it. But basically, we have levels of differences when it comes to scholars or madhabs differing among themselves, or even people in general. There are certain levels. What we have, the first level is we call usul imaniya, like the foundations of belief, or fundamentals or principles of belief. If we differ on those principles, then we do not have the same set of beliefs. We are not in the same religion even. Like what Muslims and Christians and Jews, for example, they have different principles of belief. All right. So this is where they differ in the main principles of belief. Now, Muslims, all Muslims, since you are called Muslim, then you agree on those principles of belief. Right? Quran is the Kalamullah. There was a prophet, peace be upon him, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Khatamul Nabiyyin. That's a principle. You have to believe in the prophet to be called a Muslim. That's a principle. Quran has not changed. It's the exact word for word, letter for letter, as it was revealed to the prophet, peace be upon him. That's a principle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is wahidun ahad. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. That's a principle. Right? All these, if we differ here, then we differ in the very high level of the belief. It's basically, we cannot be called Muslim. Now, if we agree on all those things in that level, we are Muslims. Great. But now the scientific principles come on board. If we differ on the scientific principles, then we have different madhabs. Like, for example, those people who say Allah has like in a place, corporealist, where he has a hand and face, or all that kind of stuff. Those are corporealist. This is a principle in Ahl Sunnah. Ahl Sunnah say no, that's basically impossible on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It cannot be, for a lot of reasons which we went through in Al Aqidah course. But these are a main madhab principles. If you differ here, you are out of the madhab. Right? If we agree on all that, then we are on the same madhab. So we Ahl Sunnah. If we agree on everything that Ahl Sunnah agrees on, like in terms of the principles of the madhab, then all of us are Ahl Sunnah. We go then to another the layer or the level after that, which is the secondary issues. If we differ in the secondary issues, then we just differ on the secondary issues. And even there is secondary levels. So if a scholar came and said something that made a mistake, you just cannot say he is not Ahl Sunnah, or I cannot take from him ilm because he made a mistake. That's nonsense. There is no scholar who didn't do a mistake. Only the Prophet, peace be upon him, never done a mistake. Anybody else after that, he is susceptible to mistakes. They do mistakes. So there is no, Al-Fakhr al-Razi, he had different opinions that nobody in Ahl Sunnah agreed on, and basically rebutted it. Does that mean Fakhr al-Razi not Ahl Sunnah? He is Imam of Ahl Sunnah in Al-Aqidah. You cannot say that. But those differences are in the secondary issues, and therefore they do not warrant somebody who disagree on those to be out of the madhab, or to be somebody that, or a alim or a scholar that you don't take ilm from. That's nonsense. That's craziness. Because if you do that, you will not take ilm from anybody. So how can I do what should you do then? You should learn the principles. That's the main important thing. That's why I keep saying, everybody who asks those kind of questions in the group, go listen to the Aqidah course. It will give you the principles that you need to learn, you need to know, so that when you listen to somebody, you understand whether they are differing from you in the principle or not. If they are differing in the principles, right, that's another madhab. If you don't want to take ilm from them, just throw them away. But if not, if they are basically within the madhab and they have mistakes or they have different opinion or even like disagreements, it doesn't necessarily have to be a mistake, but it's just another opinion, a differing opinion or a descending opinion, then you just think about that opinion and not consider it, or see what other scholars say about it, and so on. So I hope I'm clear on what I wanted to say about that. But again, if anybody wants to ask, let me know. I think we end by that. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أستغفرك اللهم من كل ذنب وأتوب إليك وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.